not telling us? What the do you know about this, you dirty prick?
Hey,
Huh?
Phil. Phil Collins is out of his mind these days. I don't know what's going on with him.
My sons and the dirty burger's all I got. Them. What about you, Four Eyes?
Did you just call me Four Eyes?
Well, I just met it.
Big mustard tiger? All I did was call him a mustard tiger. I mean, he had a big tiger and he was all covered in mustard, and I thought it was, a pretty cute little name, and all of a sudden he snaps and starts smashing Ricky's car up with a leg.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another week of Muskies on Tap. We are excited here to bring you the interview with Kyle Friedges here momentarily. We'll touch on that, but first, before we get into all that good stuff, let's introduce the other hosts here on tonight. We got none other than Max Benty.
And I'm doing good, battling a little technical difficulties here tonight. Wi-Fi went down. It's Arctic frozen cold here in Minnesota, as I'm sure it is in Wisconsin. All the Wi-Fi went down across the board here where I'm living. And going old school, man. Headphones and phones. So if there's any audio issues, I sincerely apologize. But happy to be here, especially coming off just a wild weekend, man. Brian, I see you repping the Packer hat. Could not be happier with how them boys showed up on Sunday. Made a believer out of everybody. Yeah, he's him. He's absolutely him. He might be, we don't want to get ahead of ourselves here. So I'm going to pump the brakes. But
were you about to say First Valley?
Impressive showing out of I mean, man, might as well just put the gold jacket on him now because it's gonna happen. It's inevitable. It was a fun weekend though, but excited to be back. Talk about some musky fishing. It's cold. It's miserable. So let's get into it. Brian, how you doing, buddy? Good to have you back after a little hiatus. Are you refreshed? Are you ready to go?
I am happy to be on this one. Looking forward to sharing this chat with Kyle, with everybody. Had a great weekend watching a ton of football. I mean, just what a revitalization for the NFL after just a brutal regular season, boring games, horrible QBs, sloppy football, and then they bless us with this wild card weekend. I mean, you got Jordan Love lighting it up. Super wild card. Jordan Love lighting it up. Packers getting the upset. You got the Texans shocking the world. I mean, we got incredible matchups here coming this weekend. Yeah. Round the horn here. Who you guys got advancing this weekend? Oh boy. What's the first game that is coming up? Texans, Ravens, and then Packers, Niners on Saturday. Let's go. Well, I mean, one of them, there's going to be an upset, and then we know what's going to happen. Going to have to go for them Packers. That's an obvious answer there. Maybe a little stating some overconfidence here, but that's just what we do. You know what? I'm going double upset. CJ Stroud is taking
Truth, dog.
Taking over. It's just going to be double young quarterback Saturday, just shocking the world. Again, that would be sweet. It would be cool. That would be good football. I'm torn there though. I'd like to see Stroud ball out, but I'm pushing for Lamar. I want him to prove to the world he's the man. That'll just be a fun game. Yeah, I do agree. I would. All right.
Yeah, I'm big. I'm big trust. I'm Lamar all the way in that first game. I think Ravens roll, and you already know I think Vegas is sorely mistaken with that line they're hanging out for the Packers Niners, putting Packers as an underdog. I mean, I know the Niners are a juggernaut, but dear Lord,
hold on.
They got to be nervous about the green and gold coming into town, and I think Packers can get it done.
Packers money line is free money. You heard it here first. Y'all can hit Max up after the game with any concerns.
Yeah, I already know that we're going to be getting on next week and maybe having some soggy sorrows, but Yeah, it was an entertaining weekend of football. Obviously, I think I like the Lions. I think Dan Campbell's got those boys humming. I think they take it into the NFC Championship game. And I think Bills being at home is a big deal for that Chiefs Bills game. I think there's going to be something's going to happen in that Chiefs game where one of those wide receivers is either going to drop a ball that's like at a crucial time where they need to make a catch or something like that. Some of those demons that have been haunting them all year are going to spring up, and I think Bills get it done at home as well. So
Do factor, I agree. Bills trying to get it done.
Good picks. Good picks. I like the Sunday picks as well. All right. I think before we get into too much football talk, we're going to just dive right into the interview. So we get to listen to Kyle Friedges with Cabbage Dragon Media and not some sick dude, a guy talking out of a tin can, and Brian. So here's the interview.
dun, 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 dun. Go,
Go, back,
go.
All right, guys, on the line here tonight, we got Kyle Friedges with Cabbage Dragon Media on YouTube. Kyle, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, guys. How are you?
Surviving, trying to stay warm. Brutal last 2 days up here in mid to northern Wisconsin.
Agree. It's been a little bit too warm to kick off winter here, and now it's a little bit too cold for my liking, but we're finally making ice. So hopefully everybody will be able to get out on the lakes and take advantage of that.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to a little bit more ice. I've barely been out this year, as we were just talking before recording here, and I'm battling a cold still right now to start this weird winter, but so far not so bad. But anyways, we got you on here tonight because you have a sweet YouTube channel that you've kind of, I would say, exploded as of recently, and your videography, capabilities and what you've been producing. And I think that's something that we're definitely going to touch on here tonight. But maybe before we do that, give the listeners just a little background of yourself and kind of how you got into filmmaking and videoing, going after these sweet fish that we're all missing ever so much right now.
Yeah. So my story's, I guess, a little bit unique from maybe some of the other stories you hear about people building a YouTube channel and kind of getting into the filmmaking side and stuff. And it really goes back to kind of my childhood, where I used to go on an annual trip kind of right when school would get out at the end of May, early June, with my grandfather up to Eagle Lake. And Eagle became kind of a place that was really special to me in terms of like getting up there, being out in the wilderness, the seclusion, just chasing adventure for like a week straight. And when the pandemic hit, the COVID-19 pandemic, they obviously closed the border, and folks couldn't get up there across the border, and I was one of them. So there was a few years there where I wasn't able to actually cross the border. And during that time, like, I really kind of longed for that adventure. Well, I'm sure we'll touch on Eagle a little bit more later on here, but it's just a really special place because it's just full seclusion, full wilderness. And I really wanted to get back up there. And when they lifted the border restrictions, it was like very short notice. It ended up being like the end of August. And not my buddy who used to go up there with me as kind of a childhood friend and up through high school and college and whatnot, he couldn't make it on short notice. And I told my wife, like, I'm going to go. I'm going to go back up to Eagle. It's my favorite place in the world. And I'll go solo. And she said, well, I'll go up there with you if you'd like. And I was like, well, sure. In the back of my mind, I'm going, I may never get her back up here with me again. So like, I want to like capture this and make some videos for ourselves. And what it ended up turning into was like, I really kind of got into like the videography side, capturing the content, putting it into a video that flows well, tells a story. And from there, it's just kind of snowballed and I guess grown. And it's funny because like when I look at what I put out now compared to what I put out back then, Like it's night and day difference. Most of my footage was like the big camera shots are filmed on a cell phone. Now I use a much better mirrorless camera, which obviously shows in the footage. And I wasn't real good at like cutting clips to like kill out kind of the dead air time and whatnot. So it's been an evolution, but it's kind of funny to look back on some of those earlier videos and see how it's evolved over time and off of just like one random trip that my wife decided she wanted to go on, and now she goes every year with me. So it ended up being more than just a one-time deal, which is pretty cool.
That's awesome. Your editing is very impressive. You even make the ice fishing videos intriguing when we're just wanting open water and musky again. So props to you on that. But in terms of your ice fishing this year, I know you said in the beginning kind of been waiting on this cold snap to get some better ice, but what successes have you had? I know you did a little spearing in your latest video. If you want to touch on that and any other excursions you've been on.
Yeah, so that's another interesting kind of annual trip I go on with my grandfather. He actually got me into it. He's been going on that trip. They used to go in early December, and with ice conditions kind of being a little bit more suspect earlier on in the year now than they were 50 years ago, he started going right after Christmas. It's kind of been a tradition for like the last 20 years or so that I've been doing it. And this year was by far the worst ice conditions we've ever had, as most folks in Minnesota and Wisconsin know. It's been a really, really warm winter to start it off. And then we had 4 days of rain, like straight rain over Christmas. And we went up there and ice was deteriorating and it wasn't great. And most of the lakes we drove past were wide open. But luckily the place that we go in northern Minnesota had like 7 to 9 inches of ice. And there was a few spots with a little bit less, and we had to be really careful. But we got out and we couldn't get to where we normally like to set up in terms of dark house spearing pike, and it really made it challenging because it's kind of the area we could get to is just like a giant sand flat. So it was like, take your guess on where you're going to cut your hole and see if you get lucky, kind of a situation. So it ended up being like 4 days of just struggling, like moving constantly and like no footage at all. And I was able to at least put one video together when we kind of got on some fish the last, I don't know, day and a half or so, and started actually having some success there. And I kind of wanted to walk through the setup and stuff because it's a really niche sport. Not a lot of people do it. And, you know, as an outsider looking in, it's like, it looks like it could be like a lot or like an ominous situation where you're like trying to figure out, how do I cut a hole this big? How do I go about luring these fish in and all of that? So we tried to touch on that too. And that's kind of one of my goals with the channel this year, is to be more educational, do a lot more talking to the camera and kind of explaining the why behind things and trying to help people out, because YouTube has helped me out immensely throughout musky fishing, through ice fishing, through how to work on your ATV, for crying out loud. Like there's a YouTube video for almost everything. So if I can extend that educational aspect to my videos, I think it'll benefit others, maybe more than just watching some guy on Lake of the Woods in a vlog, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of routes we could go down there. Before we get any further, I did see, if I'm not mistaken, were you sipping on a Busch Light Peach still somehow?
Yep. Right
Where'd you
here.
get your hands on those?
Well, Gus, you know, when I heard
Gus will pay double.
when I heard they were winding it down for the winter, hopefully just the winter, by the way, I stocked
Same, I
up
hope.
and I'm actually on my last case. So
Wow.
it's going to be a long rest of the winter when I finally kind of dwindle that down to nothing. But for the meantime, I'm a happy camper.
I didn't know that
That's
someone matched
smart.
Gus's love for those things. There we are.
Oh yeah, we were messaging about that a few times, I think. I know that's in your Wisconsin Muskie Battle video. You can kind of see it lingering around in the video a little bit. It's pretty funny. Such a good beer. But
That's one of my favorites.
yeah. So with YouTube, and I know you're saying like it's come a long way in just a year, and I've seen that for sure with your channel. It's kind of just like the natural progression of things, kind of everything, especially the sport as you're learning. You know, how you can get more confidence with a certain bait, just as you're saying with your own video skills, and then even just talking to a camera. I think we've chatted about this with other people and such on the podcast, where Max and we've kind of tried GoProing things and filming things a little bit, and I could tell that we were a little different off camera, and that, yeah, that's just a natural thing that happens. But I see that you have gotten for sure a little bit more educational with your recent ones. I really liked the shallow September video. Those are some really nice fish, and that was pretty cool thing to stumble on. I don't know if you want to touch on that. That was a cool video to see.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite videos that I've maybe put together. And kind of the goal with that was obviously to highlight like a really epic day. And there were some clips that happened throughout the day that I didn't include. That was actually local fishing. I try not to do a ton of filming local stuff just because I don't want to spot burn. So there's some clips where like it's very noticeable, like where we may have been at the time, that I kept out of it. But the goal with that one was, you hear people talk a lot about September muskie fishing and fish pushing shallow, but I don't know that everybody fully understands what that can mean at times. Like legitimately in September, when you get the first cool day, usually around September 7th to September 10th, when you start having those really cool mornings, those fish will legitimately push up into like 1.5 feet of water. And I'm sure you guys have seen that with your experience and whatnot. And that's what Tyler and I were doing that day, was fishing shallow flats in like 1.5 feet to 3 feet of water. And they were just piled in there that morning. And they were for about 4 weeks after that. Like I had a ton of success. I think I caught like 7 or 8 fish on a fat bastard. Like every time I went out, it was like a surefire thing that fish were either going to chase it or they were going to just hammer the bait. So what I tried to do in there was kind of give some of those tips, maybe not verbally, but at least through text. And I've tried to kind of linger that into other videos too when I'm going through the editing process. And I'm like, this is maybe a good spot to like throw a text snippet over the top of it to like help educate and bring people along and whatnot. And because not everybody's an expert, and a lot of people are at different, I guess, spots in their muskie journey. So every little bit of information can help. And like when I listen to your guys' podcast or other podcasts or watch YouTube, I hadn't thought of that could take kind of my game to the next level to a certain degree.
You guys got me.
Yeah.
Guess you're gonna have to do some serious editing for me. So something I find interesting about your fishing journey is you're a Minnesota native, as I am right now. And I think, I've enjoyed exchanging messages with you because you and I share something in common. I know you do a lot of trips up to Eagle and whatnot, but, you also head over to God's country across the border quite a bit and fish Wisconsin instead of going north and fishing Minnesota lakes. So I guess my curiosity, what's your draw to kind of heading across the border and fishing Wisconsin more and learning these systems over, doing a central Minnesota or northern Minnesota trips? Because I've heard you talk about it, man. Like, I respect the hustle. Like, you're up, I've heard you say you're up some mornings like 3-4 a.m. You make the drive, you fish all day, and like you're back that night. And I know firsthand that that's not, those are long days. I've done a few of those. So I guess what's the draw there? And then also, have you considered expanding kind of more into like the central Minnesota, northern Minnesota muskie territories at all too?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess I'd respond with a question, Max. Have you ever been on Minnetonka at 11 a.m. or 2 in the afternoon?
Yeah, with in a pontoon boat after 6 to 9 to 15 beers with my shirt off, singing along to whatever music's on the radio. That's the only time I've been out there at midday. We will get a taste of that in the PMTT next year. We're doing obviously it's going to Minnetonka in August, so I'll be really curious. I know you've kind of shared with me that it gets a little hectic out there, and I've seen that firsthand. I'll be real curious to see how that goes, and especially fishing Friday and Saturday there for the tournament.
Yeah, I'd say get your sea legs ready. Because between wakeboard boats and some of the bigger yachts and the sailboat club and all those things, it gets rocking out there pretty good. I actually fished it for the Twin Cities muskie tournament. I'm probably butchering the name now. It's escaping me, but it goes on in early June. It's really good cause. Thorne Brothers kind of puts it on, and it's a fun tournament to be a part of, and the prizes are pretty good too. But the Metro waters, there's big fish in them. For me, it's just not worth the headache unless you want to be a vampire. And even then it's risky. Like there's people out there at night that have had one too many adult beverages that aren't paying attention, right? And like the last thing you want to do is get run over while you're in your boat trying to hook a special 38-incher, right? So for me, the draw has always been Wisconsin's less busy. My family has kind of roots up in kind of the north central area of it. My parents have a lake place in northern Wisconsin, so there's always kind of that convenient tie to it too, where it's like I can go up there and crash with them and fish their lake, which is a really good lake for muskies.
Oh, cool.
But I don't know. I like the greenies. I'm a sucker for the greenies. I don't know what it is about it, but to kind of finish your question, I've done some stuff in kind of that north central Minnesota. It's been mostly in like the September timeframe when they push shallow, and I've had pretty good luck up there. The couple times I've tried it, or my boat partner has, or one of us has. And actually, we're in the middle of kicking off a remodel on our house, a pretty substantial one. We bought our house 7 years ago, and it's shot. Everything's like 40 years old, so we're doing a very, very extensive remodel on it this summer, and we're actually moving to Brainerd for the summer. So we'll be up in that central Minnesota area, and I plan to kind of kick the tires on some of the lakes up there and some things I've heard, and hopefully jump in the boat with some of the guys from the muskie battle that are kind of up in that area or up towards Bemidji and whatnot throughout the summer. But it'll be different this summer. I'll definitely spend less time in Wisconsin and kind of more time up there, and hopefully that doesn't jade me to the 50-inchers versus the 4-foot greenies, but we'll see. It'll be fun.
I feel like it's a whole different deal. We've been really limited with our Minnesota fishing, and even me living here in Minneapolis, I kind of same deal. Obviously, Gus is in Eagle River, Brian's in Green Bay, so it's just a lot more natural for us to go fish Vilas County. But that'll be fun to kind of follow along your journey up there. I didn't know you were moving to Brainerd. I know there's some great lakes around in that area. So that's exciting. I'll be curious to kind of hear what new challenges that brings, because I just feel like those systems in that area are just so much different than what we typically fish over in Wisconsin. It's just a whole different world.
Yeah, I agree. It'll be interesting. I'm not sure how much. I'm sure I'll capture a lot of it on film. I'm not sure how much I'll do with videos and whatnot. It'll kind of be to be determined on that. I mean, I'm excited to give the open water northern Minnesota bite a shot in kind of June, because it's pretty renowned for that up in that area, and I've never dabbled in it. I've experimented with it a little bit in Wisconsin, and haven't had much success. So I'm curious to kind of learn that side of it a little bit more, and it'll be interesting. A lot of those lakes there's some smaller stuff up there, but a lot of them are bigger than maybe what I'm usually accustomed to, and I'm like a sucker for skinny water locally. I love skinny water stuff. I think it's fun. I think the fish are isolated. I think they're a little bit predictable at times, and it's just, I don't know. It feels like it's easier to narrow down, especially when like you got just a Saturday. Like let's say you got 10 hours on a Saturday and you just want to try and get on fish. It's a little bit easier than breaking down a 2,000, 5,000 acre lake, whatever the case may be.
Yeah. So you've done that, right? Like I've heard you in other pods where you're literally waking up like 3 a.m. and then you're heading for day trips a lot of the times.
Yeah, that's usually what ends up happening. Like I'm usually in the truck for 2 hours, maybe longer, depending on kind of what my gut's telling me. It's a lot of gut feel, I'd say, without any real like strong leads or anything. It's just, I think I want to fish this lake today, and it's 2.5 hours away, and that's where I'm gonna go. And I'm kind of an early riser versus a night owl, so like it's easy for me to wake up at 2 a.m. and get in the truck and go versus fight into the waning hours of the night and the evening.
I think we might be polar opposites on that one. I'm a night owl, but fishing gets me up in the morning for sure. So you're saying doing all this traveling, driving far to go fish. Did you fish a good amount of new water this year, Kyle?
Yeah, I spent more time on local stuff like metro waters than I had the previous 4 or 5 years. And yeah, I mean, part of the challenge for me this last year was I did 2 trips up to Canada, one to Lake of the Woods and then one to Eagle. So right there, you lose 2 weekends because it's Saturday to Saturday. So you're a little bit limited in how much local fishing you can do. I really gutted it out on local waters early in the season, and I found some fish, but like my season started off on a lot of those new waters, like not sure what baits to be throwing. Sometimes I'd get leads from buddies and whatnot on kind of where to start, but it started off with I lost 8 fish in a row that I had hooked and lost on these new bodies of water, and it's like. On one hand, it's like a positive because, like, okay, I found one.
Yeah, you're
It's
right
good,
there.
right? But then on the other side, it's like, holy cow, like, how much more can I sharpen these hooks before like, one of these things actually sticks and lands in the bag? So it was tough. Like, if you go back and watch, I think it's the first video for my of day 4 from my Lake of the Woods series. Like, you feel 2.5 months of frustration, like leave my body when that fish hits the bag, and it's the first fish I catch on the trip, and it's the first fish I caught last year, and it was tough up to that point, and then kind of went back into some of the stuff I'm more used to in August and September, and just had a heck of a fall season this year. Had other opportunities, it could have been even better, but it ended up making up for kind of how bad the year started, for sure.
So, I wanted to talk about these muskie battles that you've been a part of here the last few years, because it's something that I think we watch on YouTube and really dig. They seem like really fun times and kind of gets you out of your comfort zone, going to fish some new water. So your partner that you fishing with, is this a buddy of yours that you've grown up with, or is this a guy that you just started fishing with recently? His name's Tyler, right?
Yeah, his name's Tyler. Tyler Eggenberger. He actually has a YouTube channel too called Midwest Fishing with Ty. And
yeah, I've watched his stuff. It's good.
Yeah, he had a pretty good start to his season. Just a good dude. And I met him at a boat ramp. It was a Thursday night, and I was able to kind of sneak away from work and drove all the way over to Wisconsin and got on the body of water and fished till like I think it was like 11 or 11:30, and it was like complete black, and I'm like trying to get my boat on the trailer at dark, and this landing has no light, and he rolls up and he helped me with it, and we got to talking, and the next thing you know, it like organically stemmed into this friendship, and we jive pretty well together in the boat, and I don't know, it's been a lot of fun kind of traveling around and fishing some of these battles with him.
So, that's awesome, because it's like, you're pulling out at 11 p.m. and you're like, oh, you're freaking nuts too? Yeah, same. All right, let's be friends. And glad that that's worked out.
What are the odds?
So how has that been? Like, so when you guys go and fish in, quote unquote, like a muskie battle would be, I know it's not like hyper competitive, but at the same time, like, there's stakes involved or whatever. How was that dynamic when you guys started fishing as like partners and, more competitive setting? Because I know for Gus and I, like, that was a totally new world, and Brian and I did that this year together, and it's way different when you're out there just shooting the shit, maybe doing a little filming. I guess how did that go, and how has it been kind of going?
Well, it's interesting. Not a lot changed, to be honest with you, because we're both like so laser focused. Like I think people who are as diehard as all of us are for muskies are just like sick in the head, and like
sure,
you have like a one-track mind. Like I have to remind myself when I go up to Eagle with my wife and my other buddy that like they don't take this as seriously as I do, and I have to like tone it down a little bit at times. But like for Tyler and I, it was very natural. We had talked about doing maybe some local tournaments here and there, which I think we'd have pretty good success in. But when we go up to Bemidji, like when I go up there to see everybody at the battle, like that's the reason I'm there, is for the camaraderie and all the people and like folks you talk to throughout the year that you maybe only get to see once a year at the battle. Like that's what I'm up there for. Like I know I'm at an inherent disadvantage when I go up there because I spend all my time in Wisconsin and they all spend, not all of them, but the majority of them, fish those lakes locally and have the pattern dialed down pretty good and whatnot. So it's like I never take it too seriously, and it's about kind of building those relationships and those friendships, which is like it's the craziest thing about the muskie industry. Like I've never been a part of anything else in my entire life where like you could be two completely different people with completely different opinions about just about everything, but because you like muskies, like you're just like friends. Like naturally. It's really really kind of strange how everybody just like gravitates to one another, and it's honestly special. Like I don't think there's too many other things like that, to be honest with you.
I think it comes from the struggle of it. You're like, holy shit, you can relate to me being out there for 12 hours without seeing anything that I'm after. Start
Yeah.
talking about how much of a nut job each other are, and boom, you're off to the races.
Yeah, there's
So
probably something to that for sure.
So what was it like going up to do the one in Wisconsin this year? I know you guys went up and fished, I think Butternut Lake or maybe some surrounding lakes as well. But what was it like, having some of the guys come over to Wisconsin and do it up north?
It was a lot of fun. I had kind of had this vision that, and I think Jeff Contreras, he used to put on and kind of lead the muskie battle, and now he's kind of stepping away from the social media side of things. And he's actually winding down his YouTube channel, but he always kind of wanted to bring it back to Wisconsin. And he and I kind of got to talking in a sidebar conversation one day, and we kind of said like we should do this, we should bring this back. And it was cool to see the interest from folks that wanted to come over from Minnesota and fish it. And it was just a really good event. Like I remember watching muskie battle videos long before I ever even thought about doing YouTube and stuff. And it was always intriguing to me, like the documenting the camaraderie side of it, like the competitive yet social side of it, and it's not super serious and all of that. And I just kind of longed for one video that like had it all, like everybody's catches, like tournament updates, all of that stuff. And in hindsight, I wish I would have done more on the filming side in regard to like the after hours stuff, like the dinners and like some B-roll and stuff of like folks just engaging with one another at the resort. And I would say it went really well. Butternut Lake Lodge was absolutely fantastic. It was a great place to stay. The fishing was good for some. It was tough because it was, if you guys recall, like things cooled down kind of early in the fall, and then it like just hung on, and turnover seemed to just take forever this year. And the fish were super scattered, and Tyler and I just struggled because we had some intel on a body of water that would maybe hold fish that were pushing that 4-foot mark. And our whole thought was, well, if we got live bait down, we're throwing big baits, like let's swing for the fences. And it didn't work out in our favor. But there was other teams that picked action water, which is kind of the beauty of the competitive side of fishing in Wisconsin, is you have both those options at your disposal. Like you can swing for the fences on a big fish and try to win it in points that way, or you can go try and put 10, 30 inchers in the boat and rack up points that way. So there were some teams that definitely had some success, as you can see if you watch the video back. But I thought it went really well. Like I said, if I could do it again, I probably would have captured more of that B-roll footage, the camaraderie side of it, and really tied the video together nicely. But there's always next year, hopefully.
Yeah. So do you feel like if the muskie battle grows in Wisconsin, like I guess if people is there, I guess, a future where maybe more people start to get involved, or more invites start to get sent out? What do you guys think, like the formatting would change at all, or are there areas you guys are looking at going to? Because there's so many pretty cool systems in Wisconsin, whether you go to some more remote flowages that are larger. There's a lot of different areas that have chain of lakes up in like Vilas and Oneida County. Have you guys like thought about that at all for the next destination or anything like that?
Yeah, so we're a little bit in limbo with it, and it's one of those things where I need to have a conversation with Jeff Contreras about if he's fine with some of us stepping up and kind of keeping it going on the Wisconsin side. Now, I obviously want to talk to Alex McLean as well, since he's running the Minnesota side, and I don't want there to be like any conflict of interest there or anything like that. I just want to get more people involved in something like this, which is so healthy for the sport, to just build friendships. And, you know, we have the right people coming to these things that are in the right frame of mind. And it's not about me, it's about the event and the fish and showcasing all of that. Right. But what I'd like to do with it at some point, if we can land on a plan for maybe keeping the Wisconsin battle going, is I'd like it to be at a lodge. And this is the dynamic of it that's challenging, is you have to partner with a lodge in order to kind of make this palatable for everybody, right? To be able to drive 6 hours and dedicate time to doing this. And so it'd be nice to find a lodge where we could be on the water, so everybody's boats are in the water and you don't have to trailer and load and unload and all those things. And it's on a big system, like a really big system, where you can go out and figure it out, and everybody's kind of fishing the same body of water, and it maybe kind of puts a tighter set of parameters around the tournament in terms of action versus trophy water and things of that nature. So that's kind of what I envision. Admittedly, we haven't taken any steps forward with it yet, but I noticed that like the weekend before Halloween this year is would be a pretty dang good weekend to go drag suckers. It should be post turnover. The fish should be chewing, fall feed bags on, all of that. So I think that would probably be the target date if we were to do something this year.
For sure. I mean, we do like our little muskie bender weekends, and I know some of the guys that come over for that definitely would be down for something like a muskie battle. And obviously, you know, you guys got away, you know, just you can't oversaturate it with too many people, but at the same time, like, you know, you're talking about getting all these like-minded guys and gals together. It kind of makes for a pretty fun dynamic. So yeah, I mean, if you hit up Gus, I'm sure he's probably pretty plugged in with lodges and whatnot. There's a lot of pretty cool opportunities, because I think being able to highlight and showcase Northern Wisconsin, you know, that's a goal of this podcast, because we love it so much, I think is an awesome thing. Like when you guys went up to Northern Wisconsin for that muskie battle, I was like, hell yeah, let's go. Because, you know, it's near and dear to our heart. And yeah, I just feel like there's so many cool systems up there where you could put some people on a body of water and, you know, have some fun, film it, and just kind of highlight all the great aspects of it for sure.
I'm thinking if you're talking weekend before Halloween, you get a big group on the Chippewa flowage, bound to have a big feed bag show up.
Juicy.
Yeah.
Maybe.
That'd be pretty sweet.
Yeah, that would be a good that'd be a good kind of middle ground for like the folks coming from Minnesota and all of that. And like we would absolutely want the Muskies on Tap boys to be a part of it if we end up putting it on again this year. And if you guys are interested in something like that. But like I look at the Chippewa flowage, I look at some of the stuff over by you guys in Vilas. I mean, the one that just seems like the pinnacle to me would be like the like if we could get on the and spend 3-4 days, like that'd be enough for me to say I'm taking the whole week off so I can pre-fish this thing and really gut it out ahead of tournament hours and all that. And like the one thing I'd like to do, it didn't work out this year, but I'd like to do for next year. My wife's kind of a big bow hunter, so depending on if she's in the tree or not, like I really wanted her to come out and do a lot of the filming of all the individual teams, do introductions, like where they're from, stuff like that. And just didn't work out where I was kind of a one-man band filming a lot of this stuff. But if she's able to come next year, like I think from a cinematography perspective, like we could put out something that's really elite and really cool and would like really kind of bring to light like who all these people are and why they love this sport and why what we're doing is a good thing to help further that sport and hopefully get more people involved in it. And kind of continuing just what we have that's just so special about the muskie industry. And and like it's funny too, because like, you know, I'd never heard of you guys till you had your podcast, but it seems like there's more and more people that are kind of like putting themselves out there, and none of us like claim to be experts, although you guys found some success in the PMTT last year and Gus is a guide and all that. But like it's like there's like a group of like up and coming people that, you know, aren't the household names in the muskie industry, and like everybody's just got a really good rapport with one another and there's not any bad blood, and it's it just makes it a ton of fun when you can be on, social medias and somebody gets a fish and you tell them congrats, or, they reach out asking about your area and you can give them some advice or whatever the case may be. It's just like furthering the good of the sport, I think, is what we want to do. And if we can showcase that they're really sweet film, a really cinematic film next year, like that would be the ultimate goal for me, to put something like that together.
That would be sweet.
You got my creative juices flowing now. I'm thinking, maybe
Yeah.
some back-end music for each team. And now once we got Kyle Friedges from Cannon Falls, Minnesota, then you get to pick the theme song. You're backing the boat in.
Slow-mo walk to your boat.
Slow-mo walk to the boat.
Yeah.
It's going to be a damn movie. This would be sweet.
Well,
I agree. I agree. This younger generation of muskie anglers, like all those guys that are household names, had to start somewhere too. And it's fun kind of being a part of maybe a little bit of a younger movement in the muskie community, and it seems to be in a good spot right now. So yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, I agree, and I don't mean any harm to, like, when I bring up household names or any of that. And a lot of those folks have been very inclusive of me too, like the Glenn McDonald's of the world, and like folks like that have reached out and like taken me under their wing and all of that. It just shows like how cool this community is and how inclusive it is and all that. And like, to compound on like what I envisioned for like the Muskie Battle film is like, I wish somebody would do something like that for the PMTT. I know Mike Keys used to do some of that, where he'd actually film like his boat and some of the other interactions and stuff like that. But I don't know if you guys watched the YouTube series Tour Level Gold, where Sam Moore and his media company kind of followed around the professional walleye tournament trail, and like they put out awesome storylines and like interviews of people, and they had like a narrator, and it was just like the most epic YouTube content you've ever seen. Like, it was so well done, and just kudos to those guys for putting it out. But like, it'd be sweet if we could take that to the muskie world too, and do that with the PMTT and these muskie battles and other events. There's a ton of really cool Muskie Inc. kind of chapter tournaments that don't get much pub other than in the Muskie Inc. newsletter. And you may see something on one of the big muskie tackle shops, social media pages highlighting some of this stuff. But it's like, the more of that pub that we can get out there, that furthers the sport and just shines a good light on it, because that's what it deserves at the end of the day. I think is just beneficial to the sport overall. So hopefully we've been able to do some of that with some of the battle films we put out, and others before me have put out before that. But yeah, there's a lot of good that happens here, and that's what we're trying to highlight.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head for me with the PMTT stuff. Like, I think there are some awesome storylines that, maybe you could flush out on video a little bit more. I mean, for example, like, this year, you have Ty and Tate Sennett, two brothers, home water on the Chippewa flowage, leading by, a mere few inches headed into the last day. And I mean, it's awesome when you're there and you like feel the vibe when you're there, and it feels like momentous, but there's really not much after the fact, right? Like, it's kind of said and done, and then you move on, and there's nothing that's really capturing it outside of just kind of the standard few interviews. And I agree with you 100%. Like, if you could get away where you're talking about these walleye videos, I'll have to check it out. But that only lends itself to more people watching it being like, damn, this is really cool. Maybe I should sign up next year and do the trail. You get more teams in there. They start going to different places. The next thing you know, there's just more boats, more money involved. It's bigger. It's whatever. And not necessarily just because it's bigger, it's better, but it would be kind of cool to expand the muskie tournament scene a little bit, I think. And I mean, you see like the bass scene and the walleye scene, these guys are, I mean, it's the real deal. And I think muskie is just a little bit behind it. So I think eventually it could get there, but I think it only gets there through the things that you're talking about with, pushing it through media and building those storylines and actually telling a narrative. I think you nailed the nail on the head, and that's what could be really cool about these muskie battle videos is like, I think the battle itself is so cool because of the video afterwards. Like, people get to watch it and be like, man, I want to be part of that. If you guys were just talk about it and there's no video after, I'd be like, oh, yeah, that sounds fun. Let me know, next time you guys are doing it. But after watching the video, I'm like, I want to be a part of that. Like, that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So that's just my 2 cents on it all, I guess.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. If it wasn't for some of those earlier battle videos, like if all I had seen were Instagram posts of big fish being caught at it, I probably wouldn't have reached out to Alex and been like, hey, if you guys have a spot, I'd love to come up there and meet everybody and get to know people. And I certainly wouldn't have the relationships I have in the industry today, which continue to grow and evolve and all of that. But it's that video piece that kind of puts the bow on all of the good that happened at the tournament or outing or whatever that then gets to live on, right? For forever. You get to look back on that. Like, how cool is it going to be? Like, if somebody was following you guys around at the PMTT last year, like how cool would it be in 20 years to have all that documented and be able to look back on it? Like,
I mean, some of those conversations would have been fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
Like how nervous we were going into the Chippewa flowage, kind of knowing what was at stake. And like, even after we caught that fish at Vermilion, I remember instantly, like we started talking, we're like, holy shit, this just got real. Like we never really even let ourselves think about, taking home any season-long hardware up until that fish at Vermilion. And then like, yeah, it would have been a really cool storyline to document. And I think we tried our best to get it on film, but not anywhere near where I think it could have been, and obviously we didn't have any anticipation that the year was going to go how it did. So
Yeah, how would we
obviously
know?
hindsight's 2020, but hopefully we can, we're going to step up our game. I know Gus just got a new camera that he had told you about. And
Yep.
I think we just got some head mounts, GoPro head mounts and stuff like that. So I think all those factors will kind of help us maybe finally start piecing some videos together. And I'm sure we'll be asking you for a ton of advice. So it's kind of a good segue into some of your filming stuff. What for you when you're putting a video together, what's a typical setup in Kyle's boat? What are you running? How many cameras are you running? What are you doing to kind of capture the storyline?
It depends on how lazy I am, because the worst part about filming is the setup of all the cameras. It's the absolute worst part. Like, especially when you drive 2.5 hours to a lake and like you just want to get out there and fish. Like it's the worst part. It's just getting all the cameras up, and then the GoPro doesn't want to work, and you got to restart it, and you got to unplug it and plug it back in. Generally speaking, what I try to do, well, it kind of depends, because when I'm in somebody else's boat, a lot of times it's okay, I would like them to run a head cam and me to run a head cam, and then we may have a stationary camera someplace. Ideally, you'd have some cameras looking down at the water. It gets to be a little challenging, but in my boat, as you'll see in some of the Eagle Lake content that's coming out, I actually have a tower cam that extends off the transom, and it's great for solo fishing. It captures like kind of the whole boat, if you will, and some of the figure eight and both sides stuff that happens. So I have one of those up. I run a head cam, and I usually like to have, if I have two people on the front of the boat, I usually like to have one of them running a head cam. And the reason for that is the audio, so that I can overlay the footage and have their voices be clear and my voices be clear, because audio is the most important piece of all this. It's the piece that I, for the life of me, can't figure out. I have so many issues with audio. I've tried everything. I've tried like the mics that plug into your camera and then you wear them on like your collar, and they only last like 7 hours before they're dead, and it's a pain in the ass. And I've just found it's better to just run 2 GoPros on each person, and then I can overlay it. And it doesn't always line up perfectly, but it's usually close enough. So then I'd have the tower cam, the head cams, and usually what I try to do is have like some gunnel cams, kind of like the Brian Scaife vantage point on the gunnel for the fish head shakes next to the boat and stuff like that. You can capture some of that. Admittedly, on our Eagle Lake trip, it's funny. I just watched Brian's last video the other day, and he talks about how he just went through like 3 or 4 days of like nothing, and that lake can do that to you. And that's what it was for us the first 2 days of the trip. So I would go through the exercise of like setting up all the cameras in the boat every morning. On the 3rd day, I'm like, I'm not going to do it today. Like, we're just going to run the tower and the head cam, and that's going to be good enough. And of course, that's the day when we catch a bunch of fish. I didn't run them, but like, you just have to be diligent about setting it up and trying to capture those shots. And then I usually keep a spare GoPro that I'll put in. It's like an orb deal to get underwater shots of the fish. I don't do it on all the fish. I should do it on all the fish just because it creates kind of cool artistic looking photos when you pull stills from it and stuff, which are just different than the traditional grip and grins you see all over the internet that everybody posts. And then get a good quality camera. Like I know Gus, you and I exchanged some messages, but get a good quality camera to get kind of close-ups on the fish. And like my recommendation to people is run it on the video mode in at least 60 frames per second. The higher the frame rate, the more you can slow it down. At least 60 frames per second, and then you can pull stills from that. So the beauty of that is you're not just snapping individual stills where you may or may not have a good picture. Like you just keep rolling the footage, right? And then you slow it down in your editing software and pull stills from it. And that way the focus is on the handling of the fish. It's not, oh shit, we took 100 photos and I just went through them for 15 seconds while you're holding this fish and none of them are good. So we got to do it all over again. And then I got to look at them again before we put this fish back in the water. And now it's in the net and now it's not. And like the goal should always be, and the priority should always be the handling of the fish. So like what I like to do is lay everything out, pull the fish out of the bag, bump it, hold it up, and just run that footage. Just run it the whole way through. And then one of the goals for me this year is remember to smile at the camera. Because normally I'm just like going through a talking sequence and I'm like, all right, let's throw her back, So I never actually take a second to like smile at the camera, which is why all my pictures is just like random facial expressions from me while I'm holding these fish. But if you do it that way, then you can get that fish back in the water quickly, especially if water temps are hot and you're kind of in that summer peak. But and you'll just have so many more stills to pull from if you do it that way. And it's worked good for me, I think. Make sure Gus, when you're using that camera, make sure you're tapping the screen to get your autofocus where you want it to be, especially if your aperture's really low, because it'll blur the background and it may blur the subject behind the fish or blur the fish and not the subject. It's one of the things I had to learn this year a little bit when I got into the bigger cameras, but that's kind of the general setup overall. There's a lot that goes into it for sure.
So editing wise, I mean, like your Muskie Battle video, how long was that process? It had to be quite lengthy.
So that's a great question, Brian. Generally, when it's just my footage and my buddies that's in the boat with me, I can do it pretty quickly, especially if like I know I captured all the good shots and I'm running the camera, like especially the big camera for B-roll, or I'm running the drone and I know it's not going to be shaky and stuff. When you're corralling a group of people's GoPro footage and they just dump it into a folder with like no labeling and stuff, it took me forever to put that video together. Forever. And then it's like, there's some stuff, like, as you guys know, like, I try to keep like who I am in front of you guys and who I am on camera is who I am in real life. And I try to like keep that humanizing side of it like very real. But you have weird conversations in the boat. We all have weird conversations in the boat that you probably never like see the light of day, right? So like when you're watching other people's footage, it's like I don't know if they're gonna want that to be said. So then I'm like slicing and dicing audio and like, kind of like edit some of that out and whatnot. But I'd probably like, if it's my video, I can probably do it a really good thorough edit, like really, really good thorough editing job in probably 6 to 8 hours, depending on how much footage there is, the length of the video. If, like I just said right there, if I have to edit out all the ums that get said, like that takes time too, and stuff like that. If somebody else is running the cameras and it's shaky and I didn't actually see how the camera was moved, then I have to watch it through and kind of figure out like what's the good piece of this B-roll or clip or whatever that we actually want to use, and it can take a little bit longer.
I'll just say if we do take part in the Muskie Battle, you're gonna learn to hate us, I think, if we send you any footage, because usually all of our catches are after just ridiculous combos.
Outrageous. Like
but sometimes
Brian, you want to touch any of those?
Gold.
What's that?
Yeah.
Sometimes you capture gold though. Like in the Muskie Battle video when Tyler and I were arguing over whether it was a dumb idea to throw topwater like the third weekend in October.
Dude,
and I said no, it's not, because all the fish are shallow. That's the only fish we've seen are shallow, and he thought it was a horrible idea, and I literally had that fish wake like 3 casts later on the bait, and it's like gold like that's just priceless that you have on camera.
Hilarious. That's like since I did just rewatch that one, I got a funny. I don't want to like spoil it for some people if they haven't seen that video, but the funniest line in there was I think Tyler said something like he said the word opportunistic, and you're like, would you learn that word in prison?
It's an inside joke. Yeah, he said opportunist instead of
Oh,
opportunistic. So I always give him a hard time.
that's too
Yeah,
funny.
we've definitely fallen victim to that. I know early on we really struggled with that, especially when we started filming, and then we would come home and whether we'd show buddies or our parents and be like, wait, why is the video on mute up until you guys catch the fish? And it's like, well, it's because we were,
Maybe
probably
one
shouldn't
day we'll
repeat it
show
here,
you.
but I know there was a spin-off of a Muskie podcast that was also I can't say that.
Oh,
When we
boy.
were when we were I don't know, it was like the time when that one podcast, Call Her Daddy or whatever, was like super big, and we were like, what if they made a Call Her Daddy type podcast for musky fish?
Oh man, that show was funny.
We started saying some pretty absurd stuff, and yeah, the next thing you know, Brian's hooked up, and we're like, well, we can't use any of this footage because
Just clip it to the
people
hook
will think
set.
we're absolutely nuts.
Yeah.
And Brian's hooked up.
Jeez,
Yeah,
they're
we had
listening.
one too. I think
they're listening.
we touched on one time last year when Brian said something, and then our buddy goes, "Fish incoming in 3, 2," and then all of a sudden, boom, he hooks up and catches a
Yeah, we had a
Think
pattern for a
so?
little while. The
Yeah.
more outrageous things we said while the cameras were rolling, better chance we'd have of a hookup, and that one was timed.
I can
That's
relate.
good.
pretty funny. Yeah.
One thing I want to go back to that you said that I think is like really important when you're talking about your setup and how you're filming a video and what you're doing is that when you're doing the grip and grain and doing the main camera stuff, taking the fish out of the water, it's really cool of you to say, putting the fish priority first, where you just have like that fast, frames per second of showing the fish off, where you measure it, you just show it off with the video. You maybe do like a little close up where you kind of go in a little bit and then you show the release. There's no cut, to like stop the filming and then do pictures. Maybe if there's 3 people in the boat, I guess you could have, one person filming, and while that person's filming, somebody could take a picture. But say if there's 2, that idea of just like taking a still from the video is like the best thing. I think that's super important. And that's really good advice. That's one other thing I wanted to say, because, for me trying to go into this video side of things, that's good for me to know for sure.
Yeah, I think it just gets back to prioritizing the health of the fish, right? Like experienced musky anglers understand this. It's just there's so few of them, and oftentimes they're stocked, which costs money. And if stocking programs go bad or we kill off too many of these fish, like they're not going to be there for us to go out and catch, which isn't good for the sport, right? So I try to be, like I said, very real about like how I do it. Like what you see is what's taking place in the boat, and prioritizing some of those fish handling practices is just what's most important to me. And like to that end, like when I talked earlier about how I wanted to be more educational with all of this, it's like hopefully somebody who's new to the sport can see how quickly that all goes. Like bump the fish quick, if I even bump it, show it to the camera quick, get it right back in the water, and just understand kind of the importance behind safe handling practices and all of that. And like one of the videos I'd want to do this year is how to handle a muskie, like 101. And you can see some of that like in my one of my more recent videos. It's called Creating a Muskie Addict, where I took my buddy who moved out to Utah. I took him out and I kind of walked the viewer through like, this is how we're going to do this. He's brand new. He's never held a muskie before. I will pull it out. I will bump it. He'll come in, slide his hand in the gill plate. We'll show it off to the camera quick, and we're going to get right back and send the fish on its way. And I think there's little tidbits like that you can take away from my videos as well as many other people's videos. But yeah, it's not about like social media status or like taking pictures of these fish. It's like the priority is the health of the fish. And everybody wants to hold their fish because you work so damn hard for these things. Like you want that moment. Like I tried to remind Jaime of that when we were up on Lake of the Woods, my buddy Jaime who went up there with me. It's like as soon as a fish was biting, it was like, we got to go. We got to get on the next one because they're going. And it's like, well, let's take 2 seconds and cherish it, but not so much that we're abusing the fish with poor handling practices either. Let's enjoy the moment for a second here before we're on to the next one and prioritize the safety of the fish for sure.
I think that's really good just because, not everyone that, obviously as your YouTube channel continues to grow, not everyone that is watching these videos is a seasoned muskie angler. So I think that's awesome that you're going to be kind of showing some of those educational pieces. From a filming standpoint, is there a shot, in 2024 that you're going to be hoping, that you can get that didn't happen in 2023, whether it's, getting a sick boat side strike on the gunnel cam or some crazy thing? Like, is there a shot that you dream of as like a YouTube kind of film creative? Is there something that you're just like, man, that would be so cool to get on film that you haven't really been able to capture yet?
That's a good question. There's certain camera angles and things I want to play around with this year. I think part of the challenge too is like oftentimes when I'm out, I'm either solo, which limits like what you can do in terms of cameras and all of that in the boat, or I generally have somebody who's like less experienced with me. So like my mind is always like, okay, I need to get on fish. We have to catch a fish before we can even do anything with the footage, right? So like that's priority number one. And oftentimes, like I said, like on our Eagle trip, like camera setup went aside because I have to do all that. So there's certain shots I want to get for sure. And it's much easier when you have 3 people in the boat. And like I look forward to my Eagle trip this next year where I'll have my buddy and my wife in the boat again, because you can just do so much with 3 people in the boat. But a lot of it's circumstantial in that like some of Ben Stone's footage is like the most elite of the elite stuff. Like his Mille Lacs fish
It's crazy
this year that was literally on fire at the boat. Like
Yeah.
that has to happen to you for you to catch it. So like some of that stuff like just
Right.
has to play out naturally, and kind of the heat of the moment. But you have to have the camera set up to do that. And if Ben would have been wearing a chest camera, that footage would not be anywhere near as impactful and powerful as it was. And it's because he
Right.
wore it on his head. And that's like, so you kind of refine that through your setup, as I'm sure you guys will too. When I first started out, I kind of had a pole right in the middle behind my steering wheel, and I had 2 GoPros, one facing front, one facing back. And since I went to the transom mount tower, I actually like the Vantage a lot better because it captures the full action in the boat. And you refine it, you play with it. I don't know. There's probably less I want to do in terms of like the shot per se, and there's more I want to do in terms of like highlighting some of the like underlying adventures that exist in the muskie world that some people know about, or maybe people don't think they're cool because nobody's ever like put out a sweet video on it or stuff like that. So I have some of that up my sleeve this year, that I don't want to speak too much about yet, because I think it'll be pretty cool when I am able to do it, hopefully. So I'd say it's more about like the adventure side of it and capturing some of that.
I've seen you have some sweet drone shots in most of your videos. Have you, and I might have missed it, but do you like try to get the fight of a fish on a drone shot, or have you experimented with that at all?
Ryan, I am not good enough at catching these fish to make that happen.
We've chatted about that.
I mean,
We're like, just leave that thing up in the air for like 5 minutes.
There's no amount of battery life on a drone.
Yeah.
Pull that off. But I like where your head's at.
I asked the question originally because like there was just a few things that finally happened this year for us where I was like, I just was rewatching these videos countless amounts of times. Like I remember, when it really clicked for me where it's like we need to get a head cam was we went out one day with our buddy Clayton, and he was wearing his head cam, and he had this just awesome Medusa eat like 10 feet out from the boat. And you could literally see like the jaws of life just like open up underneath this rubber bait, like during the pause. And, then the fight ensues and the fish comes around. It's like this beautiful, like fairly sizable tiger muskie, and it shoots up next to the boat, starts head shaking, and like the freaking tails of the Medusa, like when you slowed it down, are like outside the muskie's mouth, like going back and forth. And I'm like,
That was
okay,
cool.
we need to get some head cams because this shit is awesome. And like, you're just not going to see that on other angles. And so that's kind of what sparked the question of like, you know, like you're talking about the Ben Stone thing, like just crazy shot, right? Like once in a lifetime seeing I don't know how big that fish was, but I think it was, I mean, I'm assuming, I think it was pushing 50 or whatever it was, but just seeing a fish of that size come in that hot on the figure eight and, you know, just smoke them both sides. It's like, okay, this is pretty cool stuff. And I think that truly captivates why we do what we do and spend all these hours is like, you know, if everyone ever asks you like, dude, why do you do that so much? It's like, here's a video of why this is fun for us. And, you know, maybe people will understand a little bit more.
Yeah. And, you know, to that end, like you have to set up your cameras to be able to capture some of that stuff like successfully. Right. And like one of the videos I want to do this year is going to be like how I set up each one of these GoPros and why I set it up, with also like a fish catch to highlight the reasons why and all of that. Cool. And like the very first fish I ever got on footage, I had literally like just purchased all of these GoPros, got it rigged up in the boat or whatever. And I was up at my parents' lake place and I was fishing. It was early June and I was fishing a shallow tube over like a mid-lake hump that had just a ton of bait on it. And like, it just looked so good. And I like kind of uprip this tube and this fish comes up and just pile drives it like 15, 20 feet out from the boat. And because I had my gunnel cam up, set up with 120 frames per second, this fish, I had to like, I had the net completely out of position, which was the first mistake. But I like pull the fish past it and the fish like starts head shaking underwater and then it flips and it kicks its tail out and the tail slaps the water and the water comes up and hits the lens. And I could slow it all down right next to the boat. And it's like the sickest shot ever that I'll never be able to like, I'll never be able to replicate no matter how long I try. And like the water's just like perfectly calm and clear. And you can see the fish just like head shake after it like slaps the water at the camera and stuff. And I was filming in 1080 versus 4K. So like, it looks okay when you bring it to 4K, but it doesn't look great, especially if you're like watching the videos on a TV and stuff. So like, that's the other piece of advice I'd give you, Gus, is like, make sure you're filming in 4K. Yes, it takes up more file size, all of that, but you can zoom in, and especially on your big camera, like I can zoom in on my pictures in the detail. Like you can see every little scale on that fish, every little like imperfection. Like it's just incredible. So if you ever do get a really epic like picture, you can blow it up and like hang it up in your house or something like that, and you'll have all that detail.
Oh, nice.
That's good to know. I might have to switch the GoPros to 4K. I can't remember what FPS I shoot at. I think I have 10s. Do you know if they shoot in like 120 FPS on 4K? That might be a limited factor. If
I don't recall, they're all a little bit different. And then
Yeah.
some of them won't allow you to, I want to say the 10s only do 30 and 4K on looping, which you're probably running looping if you're running your GoPros in the boat. So I think you'd have to go down to 1080 to get to 120 on those. But some of the newer ones you might be able to do that. It's funny when you go to GoPro's website, they don't list like the frame rates that are available options for each model under the looping feature. It's just under their standard videography feature, which none of us are going to use because we'd have 12 hours of nothing.
Yeah, I don't need to buy giant SD cards or multiple SD cards. You know, that's not the point of what we're running, you know, external batteries pretty much on everything because GoPro batteries flat out suck like a lot.
Yeah, that's the biggest piece of advice is hardwire all of your GoPros to run off external power. So like in my boat's an older boat, so like I have no problem like hacking into it and like running new wiring and stuff. And I ran USB plugs in like strategic spots where I could then just run a cord up to the GoPro. And that way they're just always powered, always on. You're not messing with batteries. The only one that I have to mess with batteries on is the one I put in the orb for underwater shots. I have to mess around with batteries on that one a little bit, which isn't a big deal because you're using it like once, maybe 3 times a day max. And then the head cam, the external battery packs only last so long. So you got to remember to swap those out partway through the day or whenever it dies.
Right. Yeah. Cause you don't want, it's like a balance of, you don't want a giant pack in your pocket. It'll run all day, but you'd rather have a little smaller one that'll
Yeah.
go 8, 9 hours. You got to switch out once or something like that. I got another question for your tower cam. Have you run a YOLO tech, and what do you use right now or this last year?
So I don't run a YOLO tech, although I wouldn't be opposed to doing it, especially on the bow of the boat, um,
Mhm.
to kind of capture the front two anglers and any chaos that happens in kind of like just a different perspective. Like if you can break up your footage in your video, like the key, like I've heard Mike Key say it before too, like the key in videography and like putting out footage is to always have like a break, like something to like not lull people to sleep when they're watching your video. Because if it's just like me talking to the screen for 2.5 minutes doing an intro, like it's easy for folks to get distracted and maybe not want to watch it. And even myself, when I go back and watch some of my older stuff where like I didn't break it up, um, it gets a little long to sit there and like listen to me talk about what's going on. So if you can add those different vantages and like kind of split up the action and the camera perspective, it kind of re-engages the viewer's eye to essentially stay engaged in your videos. But I don't run a YOLO tech. I would consider one on the bow. My my camera pole is actually, I think it's a down east transom rod holder that I drilled a hole through, and then I have like a quick latch that goes through it. And then what I did is I went to Menards and I bought a painter's pole, like an extendable painter's pole,
Mm-hmm.
and I just mounted a GoPro mount to the top of that, and I drilled a hole through that too, so then I can set it in the rod holder and latch it with like my quick clip. And then I have a ram mount that goes over to my gunnel and kind of locks it tight. It makes like a triangle on it and holds it very stationary. And then what I do is I just, when I get to the spot I'm going to fish, the first thing I do is I run back there and I extend the pole all the way up and lock it in place. And then it captures all the footage. And then when I go to fire up the boat, I just bring it down as low as I can so it's not shaking as I'm flying across the lake. And I haven't had any issues with that yet. It's a little janky, little makeshift, but there isn't a good option if you want to get that perspective. Really, you kind of have to make your
Yeah.
own.
Yeah, you definitely do. And I think I got to look into that or something. I got a YOLO tech out the back. And when I originally did it, I just ran one GoPro on, I always do wide to kind of, give the view of me fishing in the back and then Max or whoever's up front in the front, but that eliminates the whole one side of the boat. It eliminates behind the motor if I have like a figure eight that goes far. And then I did a janky like clip, one of those adjustable like $25 clips you can get on Amazon that kind of like are bendable. I don't know the name of them exactly, but they have like the clamp, like a
Yep,
painter's
yep,
clamp or whatever.
yep.
Yeah,
Those
yeah.
are very handy, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. I broke one actually. That was in that story of the Chippewa flowage fish, Max's second one. But I ended up doing two off that YOLO tech because there's two ports, and where I had one more facing me and then one facing the front. And I did that to try to eliminate what I was going to touch on before when Max was talking about Clayton's Tiger that he got, where he had that sick head cam footage. We're like, okay, we got to get head cams. I had a chest cam. I wore it for a while and then I stopped wearing it and just kind of only did, the stern mount. But that one we were running, I think just one that day, and it hit. He was casting on the opposite side of the boat. So when it hit, you can't see anything, So like I lost a perspective there. And if he had a chest cam, it probably would have been just nobody would have been able to see that cool footage. So yeah, I think overall I gotta look into getting a new vantage point, because I was gonna circle back to something you said, I think like right away, or one of the first things you talked about when you're talking about filming was you don't want to give away spots and lakes and stuff like that. And that's something that I've always been like, about, tippy toeing my way into filming here. I'm trying to like figure out what could be a good angle. That's why I like tilt the hat cams down, because you can still kind of cut the top of the screen, get rid of that
Yeah.
shoreline, and
Yeah.
I want to have like I want to find a way where you can still see like a hook set, not just the head cam, but also not give away everything. I don't know if that's a GoPro lower and looking up, or if it's one of those that you've seen, I think like Musky Frenzy guy makes it where it's like way the hell up there, like looking right
Yeah.
down. It's like a spaceship looking down on someone. It's like, I don't know if there's a happy medium.
Mine's similar to his, but his is probably a little taller, but I like it because it just gives a good vantage of like the back of the boat and where my figure eight would be, almost the whole boat right past kind of the gunnel on the starboard side, and then it kind of extends out just a little bit in front of like where the person in the front would be, so you could see some of their boat side action too, but I can basically cut out like all the background. So if I did get cool footage that I want to piece into like a channel trailer or like a talking point or something like that, I could leverage that footage on some of the local waters and stuff that maybe I don't want to give away where I'm at.
Mm-hmm.
Be great to have an app that got created where you could just like put in random boathouses on the shoreline or something like that.
Just
like,
the same
there's no way
boathouse.
he was here. There was a giant white boathouse in this footage. Everything else looks the same, but I don't see any boathouse. So
We'll find like the most prominent boathouse on the Eagle River chain that everybody could recognize, and then just plant that in every lake we fish. And then one day I'm gonna go out at that boathouse, say on Catfish Lake, and there's gonna be like 10 guys casting it. Yeah.
Or just put it in every thumbnail, in the background of every thumbnail pic for your YouTube.
Yeah.
All right, Kyle, I want to transition into some real fishing content. What was your best story from the year? Not necessarily your biggest fish, but anyone that's funny or was quite eventful.
Do you guys name spots you catch muskies on? Like, do you create nicknames for spots and stuff?
Oh yeah, pretty much every spot.
So I'm like I'm trying not to laugh right now, but my favorite story from the whole year is day 3 Eagle Lake. I catch a real nice fish in the morning, and then we just had like flat calm bluebird the rest of the day or whatever. And my wife wasn't in the boat in the morning, but we went back and got her, and then we went out and we fished a lot of like new stuff in an area that I know relatively well on the lake. And we fished this, it's like a saddle between mainland, well, it's not even mainland technically, it's a giant island and a smaller island, but it's like so wide that you would never guess there's like a saddle there that has like cabbage in it and stuff. And everybody just flies right past it. And we fished through it that morning. It was probably around noon, 11 in the morning to noon or something like that. And we raised a smaller fish off the cabbage bed. And what I like to do up there, because Eagle isn't mapped, is when I'm done fishing through a spot, I like to just extend the shoreline just a little bit further. Like, let's make sure there isn't something else that sticks out here when I'm auto charting. And in this case, there's like a rock pile that stuck out right where everything starts to drop off to like a really good deep basin, like 40-foot basin. And I saw it on side imaging. It showed up on auto chart or whatever. And I said to them, when we come back later, when we're working our way back towards camp to fish, to try and catch the fish we raised off the cabbage bed, like, we're going to extend it past this and we're going to cast right past this rock pile. So I think we raised like 13 fish or something like that the rest of the day. And it was just like bluebird conditions on Eagle is just tough, just super tough. The water's super clear. The fish are super smart. And we come back to fish that fish we raised off the cabbage bed. And like, at this point, like, my wife hasn't seen a muskie in the boat because she wasn't there earlier in the day. And like, I can tell, like, she's like, he's making me cast. And I'm like, when we're up there, I'm like, you guys got to be casting. You got to be casting. We're probably 40 minutes from sundown at this point. And we go back there and we raise that fish off the cabbage again. And she's really lazy and, probably in upper 30s. And she's not going to commit. I know that. And I said to them, I'm like, well, let's just fish past that subtle little rock pile we found. And we'll move on to the next spot, headed back to camp or whatever. And right after we raised that fish, I asked my wife, because I could tell she was getting a little frustrated. I was like, if I was your guide, what would you rate me? And she goes, well, we've seen some fish today, but I haven't caught one. And we're on day 3 and I haven't caught one. And she goes, probably 2.5 stars. And I'm like, okay, all right, we got something to prove here. So we just get to that rock pile and I hook into a fish and I'm like, this has got to be it. Well, what ended up happening is I was running a Suic, I think at the time, if I remember, I'd have to go back and watch the footage again. But I ended up hooking this pike kind of funny where it got hooked in the mouth and like through its eyes and like across its back. And I was like pulling it in sideways and it was kicking. So it like felt like head shakes in a bigger fish. Well, anyway, she like makes a cast as I'm like trying to get the Suic off this fish. And my buddy's like got the net behind me because we thought we had a better fish on. She casts a fat bastard up there, like right on top of that rock pile. And all of a sudden I just hear, oh my gosh, I got one. Oh my gosh, I got one. And I'm like, oh, here we go. So I like throw the pike back in the water and I grab the net and I run up there and she boats it. And it was just a touch under 47. And it was first muskie she's ever caught on Eagle Lake or whatever. And we're just like elated at this point. Like, we're done. We're not going to be able to top this moment right here. Like, we're going back in and we're going to have a beer to celebrate or whatever. And right as I'm firing up the boat, I'm like, what would you rate me now? You know, to kind of recap it or whatever. And she's like, well, I'd probably bump it up a little bit at this point. So we actually ended up naming that spot, which is why I asked you guys the question. We ended up naming that spot 2.5 stars because that was her original rating for me right before she stuck that one. And it was just a perfect, thick Eagle Lake tank, like everything you go up there for, all in that moment.
That's sick.
2.5
That's
star
awesome.
spot.
You got any other funny spot names? I know we got a few that come to mind. I mean, we got a few on the Eagle River chain that really, like, if we could name them all, and I don't think even people that grew up on that body of water they'd be like, I don't know what that means.
Nobody knows Stupid Boathouse.
No one knows Stupid Boathouse spot.
No one knows the Painter's Flat because some guy that paints houses told us there's walleye there, and then we found out it's actually a great muskie spot, so we just name it the old Painter's Flat.
Yep, that's a solid one.
I don't know that I have anything that's, well, we named the spot where I caught the fish earlier that morning Poor Audio, because when we went and pulled the footage afterwards, I realized that my mic was like broken and it was just like pop, 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 like you could hardly hear me. And luckily I saved my GoPro, so I had audio, but we didn't realize it was bad until after my wife's fish. So I've been like trying to fix the audio on her fish because it was just really poor audio quality. But yeah, we named that spot that morning Poor Audio because that was when it really started. And it actually started before that on Lake of the Woods. It must have damaged the microphone or something and didn't realize it until after that trip. But we got a bunch of different spots. Like I met an older gentleman up there. His name's Rod. He showed me a reef up there that nobody ever fishes, and there's always a 4-footer on it. Always 100% of the time. And I go back in my mind over and over again because we had this fish up to the boat like 5 or 6 times last year, and I'm just like, gosh, what could I have done differently to get that fish to eat? And I've got some ideas on how to get baits where I need to with the right action to maybe get that fish to go. And I'm pretty sure it's the same fish I raised down at the year before. So there's Rod's Reef, and then there's another spot that's called Traffic Jam where there's just always like 15 muskies on it. So I don't know anything funny, but yeah, practical, maybe a little witty. I don't know. I'm not a comedian by any stretch of the imagination.
They're also always just more funny to you because, like, it's an inside joke or whatever. Shifting gears, and you can touch on this for Eagle Lake too, but musky baits or musky baits. When you've kind of started to tackle these Wisconsin greenies, what are some of your favorite, baits that you like to throw? Or is there anything new that stood out this past year that maybe didn't shine for you the year prior that you kind of stumbled into? Anything like that?
I threw a lot more topwater this year than I have in the past, which is probably just maybe an issue on my end where I get locked into like what works. And usually with Wisconsin fish, it's rubber. Like if you throw rubber, you're going to catch fish, especially big rubber, which is like the worst bite ever. Like as soon as July hits, it's like, okay, I'm strapping on a Mag Dog or a Husky Deuce, and I'm literally going to rip this as hard as I can and snap it as hard as I can all day for 12 hours and hope I get a bite. So I end up like gravitating towards rubber a lot on Wisconsin fish, but I threw a lot more top water, especially from September to October.
A little easier on the shoulders.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It was actually really nice. It was pleasant to fish for a change.
It's like, oh, this is actually kind of relaxing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can do this all day.
And I saw you caught a bunch on the Fat Bastard. Was that like just A1, the best one, or did you have a couple others that you threw?
It was mostly that. Yeah, mostly that. I have
Was it like, oh, sorry.
I have an older one that just has like just the right sound. Like
Yeah,
just
that's
the
what I was
right
gonna
sound.
ask.
And I'm like borderlining on like, do I retire it? But it just works everywhere. It works in Wisconsin, works in
Nah.
Minnesota, works in Canada. That's what my wife caught her fish on, was that. And then I think we had the next day after that, I think we had 11 blowouts on that bait on Eagle. I think it was 11 fish that just never got hooks. So I have no idea how that happens, but
Brian's got to put the bottle of Jergens away right now.
Where was that at? Where was it? Do you have a bomb squad flaptail?
I do. I haven't thrown it much. I had one of the original
Yeah.
the big one, and it didn't have like all the nice harnessing and stuff on it. So I like every cast was like readjusting everything, and then I reached out to him and he's like, yeah, if you destroy it, I'll send you a new one because the new harnessing's better. And he did. And I just haven't thrown it much. Like I had intended on doing it on Eagle a little bit more. And Eagle's not really known to be a flaptail lake, but I just wanted to try it because the thing moves so much water and it's so noisy.
Yeah,
The smaller one works good in Wisconsin. I haven't tried it though.
Yeah, leave the Fat Bastard in the truck this year. Bring that flaptail and then hit me up. That thing is magical.
Yeah, I'll take your word for it. I'll give it a shot.
We had a
PB.
streak. We had a streak this summer, where whoever, well, usually it was me, but whoever was throwing it out front in front of the boat always seemed to get the fish to move.
He calls it how it is.
Yeah. I knew Max would chime in if I didn't throw that in there. So
He still is gonna.
I love
We
it.
got the most hilarious like 3-person boat dynamic because like fishing with 3 is just way different than fishing with 2. You know, like you got those 2 guys at the top of the boat, and you know Brian and I we rub elbows a little bit. Sometimes we get into a little
time to
fisticuffs.
throw the
You know,
mitts.
Yeah, you guys
nothing's
dropped
really
the
off
gloves
the
a few
table,
times too.
I mean, it's like it's crazy, dude. I'll literally be, you know, all right, Brian, all right. You got the front of the boat last night, this morning. You know, maybe give me, maybe give me a little shine here. I'm like, all right, and I'm like, all right, I'm not really feeling this bucktail. I'll go back to the tackle box. I'll throw some out. I'll look over my shoulder. Hey, Brian, what are you doing up on the front?
Yeah.
He slides over a few feet, and
Yeah, every once in a while I just hear Max go like, hey, if he's got the front of the boat, and I look up and Brian's standing like 2 inches from Max. I'm like,
Mid-huck.
dude, we got all that room in the middle of the boat.
so it's become this hilarious, just like turf war, which always adds a lot of excitement over the course of a 10-hour day. Just something to keep us engaged.
It's
And
funny.
we've done. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say it's funny when you fish from the back. Nobody ever wants your spot, you know.
Yeah.
Yep, I get that
That's all right
too.
with me. I'll back clean up
Yeah.
back there. That's no problem.
Yeah,
That's how I
thank
roll,
Gus has
too.
been great. Thank God he hasn't been in the fight for the front. You know, he wants to stay in the backs. That's where he's guiding. And
Mhm.
I don't know how it would go down if 3 of us were butting heads for that point of the boat, but
Jeez.
hopefully
I don't want to
you'll-
know.
yeah, that's good.
It'll
Don't need
never
3
happen.
bodies up there.
We've done like a few trips now too this year. We're running 4 out of Gus's, 18-footer, and it's fun because like it almost feels, you got one guy casting out the back, one guy up front, one guy typically throwing more parallel, and then the other guy's throwing off the other edge. And there was a few days where it was super eye opening on specific spots that you typically, if you're just running 2 people, both people would be throwing too short or too whatever the structure. And the guy actually throwing off the other side, there was a few days where they were the ones that were typically catching and moving the fish.
Mhm.
I know one day that we were out with me, Gus, and two of our buddies, Clayton and Nick, and it was actually the people that were throwing opposite of typically where we were throwing these spots normally that were getting fish to move. So it's super great for learning because you're like, man, these fish do kind of paddle around and on certain days, like they're just not where they're typically set up, and you're only learning that by having more people. So that was kind of fun actually. I mean, I don't know, it's interesting for sure.
Well, that's the beauty of having that extra
All
line.
right, go ahead.
Well,
I was gonna say that's the
Yeah.
beauty of having that extra line. Like when we were on Eagle this year, the water was way down. Like it was like 2 feet down this year. So the fish weren't like sitting where they normally do. They were pushed off structure a little bit. And the challenge again is like my wife's very new to the sport. My buddy isn't a big musky angler or anything. So like you kind of have to have them throwing baits that are easy for them to maneuver, right, and use and aren't going to kill them, especially my wife to throw all day. And so I generally have them like throwing blades or swimming dog and a bucktail, or sorry, and a top water, I mean. And then I'm in the back, like trying everything that gets a little bit deeper. And I kept pulling fish off the back, but they were way down. Like, and I didn't have anything to like would be easy for them to fish off the front, and it limited us a little bit. Like in hindsight, like had I had a jointed crank or something, we could have thrown that on and just like reel it in, give it a sweep or two, and probably convert it on some of those fish. But if it would have been a normal year and those fish were staged out there and we were pushed up a little tighter onto the structure, casting some of those spots, like if we didn't have another line off that deeper edge, like we wouldn't have known. And I usually try to stay off structure a little bit more than maybe the average guy does up there, just because I've seen fish fall from so deep up there in the past that I try to stay off a little bit more, which I don't know, works sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, the more lines you have in the water, the better off you're going to be, obviously, to try to put that pattern together and kind of figure out what's going to work and what isn't.
Yeah. So always trying to put the pieces together. It's always interesting when weird shit like that kind of happens and it makes the light bulb go on. And I know it's kind of helped us for tournament fishing. I mean, a lot of the times when it's just Gus and I, or, the tournament Brian and I did, like we rarely are ever just two people casting at the shore, where a lot of times the guy out in front, me, is casting just freaking wherever. Cause, I know Gus is going to be pinpoint getting that bait in there from the back of the boat. And, he's kind of guiding me like, and it's kind of just a good little mindset shift. I think it's really easy to get super locked in. Like, hey, we're 30 feet off a weed bed. Let's just cast over the top of it, and hope somebody strikes gold. When in reality, there's a lot of these times these fish are sitting off. Like you were saying, you set up a little deeper. I mean, I think that's awesome. You're starting to hear more people kind of talk about that. It'll be interesting. I feel like eventually there's going to be nowhere for these fish to hide anymore. I feel like everyone's starting to get pretty educated in this musky stuff,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, for sure.
it's all good. All right, well, we're kind of hitting the point. Is there anything else you guys want to touch on here as we're starting to kind of wrap up?
I was just gonna ask you said you went to Lake of the Woods and Eagle Lake. So do you got Eagle Lake videos in store for this winter? Is that gonna be a big showcase?
I'll probably release 3 of them. I'll likely split it up into. We had a slow first couple of days on the trip. Like we moved a pile of fish. We were bringing them to the boat and stuff, but they just weren't committing, and there's only so much you can do with that. And then the last 3 days of our trip, the wind picked up to like 30, 35 miles an hour, and it just tossed us around. And I had already been to Lake of the Woods for a week and had already fished really hard, and we'd fished hard for like 3.5 days up on Eagle, 4 days up on Eagle. And I was kind of at the point where I was maybe more willing to not battle the wind. So we spent the day trolling, and it was super unproductive. And I don't have a good trolling game at all. I'll be the first to admit it. Like it's one of the things I want to work on this year. And so, yeah, we'll release some Eagle Lake stuff. And then I have a few sucker fish that I will probably hold off on until early fall. And I want to go over the harness. I made my own harness, and it outproduced all the store-bought stuff. So I kind of want to talk about that a little bit and maybe help some people out there. It's really easy to do.
Nice.
and try and again be a little bit more educational than maybe I have been in the past. I'm not an expert by any means. Like, this is just what's worked for me and whatnot. But if it helps somebody, then great. That's what I want.
That's cool. Yeah, definitely want to hear about what you got in store on the YouTube thing, because that's the big thing. If for the people in the back, if you haven't heard, Cabbage Dragon Media, go get a laptop out or phone
Go
and
get you
subscribe to
some.
that channel. Go get you some. Completely agree.
Yeah, I wanted to extend a thank you to you for doing that stuff, because I know it's thankless work and it's keeping all of us sane. And I know I've told this to other people, like we've had Brian and Ben Stone and guys like that on here, and it's awesome that you guys are putting these videos together, because just even seeing some of the footage that we've got, I know how hard it is to put it all together. We've been unable to do it so far, so thank you a bunch for making some awesome content and keeping us all entertained, especially during these winter months when things start to get a little bleak and you get a little antsy. It's
Oh,
nice.
yeah. No, I appreciate that. It takes a lot of commitment and time behind the computer, and like you said, it's pretty thankless. And luckily, I've been pretty fortunate that I don't have that big of an outreach, so I don't get a ton of the hate that some of the other guys get on their videos with just like random comments of like obviously
End
like
it.
I know yeah like your guys'
That one.
podcast review, right? Like, I haven't had a ton of that yet. I'm sure that's to come. I had a little bit of that on the Wisconsin Muskie battle video, but like, yeah, if anybody could take one thing away from this, it's like YouTubers don't have to do this. Like, there's no money in YouTube Muskie videos and production and all of that. Like Doug Wagner did a video a few years back on like how much money he made, and Doug has some of the most elite, like raw, pure muskie catching content out there, and he wasn't making any money off YouTube. So we're not doing it for that. Like, I do it to capture these memories and kind of make this stuff last a lifetime, and it helps me because now I know, like, if I go to Lake of the Woods again next year and I'm in a cold front, I've got 5 days, 6 days, 7 days of videos that I can go back and watch and remember what worked well, what didn't, what patterns we were on, and things of that nature. So it's educational. It's hopefully helpful to others, and it's helpful to me as well as capturing some of those memories. So that's why we do it.
For sure. Yeah, I just pulled up the video of the Muskie battle. Gotta love, you always gotta respond with thanks for watching. You always gotta throw that in there if you're gonna reply to those comments. It's like,
Kill them with kindness.
yeah, exactly. Well,
I don't
thank you
get
so
that.
much for what's that, Max?
I'm just saying, I don't get that. Like, you're
Oh,
taking the time to edit and put out stuff for people to watch, and then people are going to take the time to be like, why would you release it? I don't know what kind of hate I didn't read any of the comments, but I've seen stuff on other people's where I'm like, damn, they're just putting out some cool content. It's not a big deal. Everyone can relax. It's all good.
We don't need to take it so seriously.
Yeah, it's no problem. It's all good. It's
yeah,
all
they
good.
need to go as I said, when I say like hate, they need to go join the Play Haters Ball with Dave Chappelle and friends.
Yeah.
Join the
And
hate
just go
community.
breathe some air outside.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you guys got anything else, Brian, Max?
I'm good. This has been awesome. I can't thank you enough, Kyle, for coming on. I know we've exchanged some messages in the past, so I was happy that we could make this work tonight, and we'll definitely be watching your videos as you release them here this winter and following along with your season next year. And if there's anything we can any value we can add to the Muskie battle for Wisconsin, it'd be awesome to be a part of it next year. And that's a really exciting thing, and just hope to keep in touch. And hey, man, we're not too far away, so if we can hop in the boat together next year, that'd be awesome too.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it. Yeah, we'll have to work something out with the battle next year, and then maybe some local stuff, Max, if you're around on the weekends or something.
Yeah, that would be great. Maybe you and I can bring out a case of Peach Bush Light and brave the Tonka waters and do a little scouting for the PMTT in August. That'd be great.
Yeah, we can do that.
Good stuff.
Awesome.
All right. Well,
Well, thanks, Kyle, for
sorry,
coming
I'm
on.
lagging.
Oh, that's all right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks for
Max
having me,
is good.
guys.
Cool. Appreciate it, Kyle. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, guys.
Well, guys, we can't thank Kyle enough for coming on the podcast here tonight and talking some YouTube stuff, travel stories, fishing stories, all that good stuff, camera setups. We had a blast talking to him about his YouTube channel, Cabbage Dragon Media. If you guys haven't heard of it, please go check it out. He's got some sick footage, great videography skills, great edits, good commentary. Honestly, can't say enough good things about him. I know on the podcast with Glenn McDonald, he said some great things about him. It's just, it's just great stuff. So I think we'll go around the horn here as we usually do after the interviews. I don't know who wants to start, but what's the takeaway you had in this interview?
Yeah, so I really enjoyed that. Kyle's an awesome dude. Really good guy. I feel like I say that about everyone we interview, but just shows that there's a ton of great people in the muskie industry. But yeah, I enjoyed him diving into the muskie battle a little bit. I think it sparked kind of all of our creative juices. I had some ideas as to like how you could lay out the video, and in my head, I'm just picturing like the old Bassmaster tournaments you'd watch on TV on Sunday morning. They just flash between boats. Like, all right, we're over here at this team's boat. They're hooked up, and then you're just flashing around. And depending on how many fish you catch, you can make a long video. And I know he'd have his work cut out for him on that editing side, but um, yeah, hoping to be able to potentially take part in that this year. But yeah, awesome talks with him. Max, how about you?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think getting the creative juices flowing with the video side of things. I think just talking with him got me really fired up already for next summer. I know Gus, we've mentioned in the interview, just got a new camera, so we'll probably get some new footage type, shots coming out of our camp. But especially for the muskie battle, I just think that that's such a cool idea, such a cool event. It'd be awesome to just be a part of it next year. Do what we can to bring some value to it and just be part of it. I think would be awesome. There's so much to highlight in northern Wisconsin. I think you can get on some really cool systems up there, whatever they decide to do. Could make for a very entertaining shoot. So yeah, obviously, I think another big takeaway I had just meeting another younger guy that's kind of dedicated himself to this muskie thing. It always gets me fired up and makes me feel a little bit more sane. Just
Yeah.
being part of this community. It's always good to meet somebody else that's got the bug on the same level that we do. Hearing him drive, 2.5+ hours just for single day trips to go out and chase these stupid fish is just great. Just great to hear. You can definitely feel his passion when he talks about the sport. The handling of fish, the wanting for longevity of it. I think it's all great stuff. So a lot of good takeaways from the interview. I hope you guys enjoyed that one. Anything here to kind of update as we move into the end of January? I know we got show season coming up. It sounds like we got some guests that might be attending a few of those shows. I know that we'll be at a few of them. So, Gus, take us away on any sort of updates from the muskie world. I know you're speaking at a new one, right? Or
Yep.
speaking at a
Yeah.
few of them, doing some speaking engagements this year.
Yep. I can chat about that for sure. Because we haven't chatted here together in a while. We pre-recorded 2 in a week, way back in early. Well, I shouldn't say way back, but early January, and now here we are. And it's this podcast is gonna air, the day before Chicago Muskie Show. That's a big one. Unfortunately, none of us 3 are gonna be able to make it to that one. I know I had some people asking about that. I hope maybe some of those that go to the Chicago will just go bump up to the Milwaukee one, because that's where I for sure will be going. I'm not sure. I don't think Max will be able to make it. Brian, I'm not sure either. I think Wausau's the main one for sure that we're all gonna do. But yeah, at the Milwaukee show, I'll be on a guide panel. I'll get some more info out once I get some more info on timing, who's going to be on it, and where it will be. I've never been to the Milwaukee show, so I don't know everything, the ins and outs down there. So I'm really excited to go to that one. And then coming up, actually, between Chicago and Milwaukee show, I'm going to be doing a seminar at the Muskie Road Rules event that Greg Thomas puts on Vilas County fishing. I haven't really put a full title to the presentation yet, but I'll do a seminar there at I think he said the event's in Mosinee, Wisconsin. So I'm really excited about that, and I'll get out more information to you guys once I know more. And yeah, that's the future update right there. The rest of the shows after Chicago and Milwaukee aren't until March is when Minneapolis and Wausau are. And I know there's also some shows going on here shortly in Pennsylvania. I think it's the Muskie Max and then the New York show. We won't be going to those. Those are a little bit of a stretch and travel for us, but I hope everybody enjoys those shows if they're going there. If any of the listeners are going there, finally get to talk to some musky people in a warm building, not out in ice cold freezing lake, and get to talk about musky fishing and cope with our sadness by buying a whole shit pile of musky stuff. That's our favorite part of it. We're gonna be it's hashtag not new wait, sorry. Hashtag new bait season. Buy new bait season.
Let's dive into that real quick. There's been some new show colors being released. There seems to be some new baits that are going to come out on market. You guys been eyeing up any of those new I guess releases that have kind of come out here over the past week or two? I mean, I know obviously we got our eyes on that big old quad dog, and some of those colors from Muskie Innovations came out, and they look,
dude,
tasty.
Take my freaking
you
money,
guys
man. All those Ultra Flash or whatever, the Lunar series. Come on, man. I know they're just doing that for freaking catching our eyes, but they catch fish. I freaking love those Lunar series. I got a Lunar walleye or something from a year or two ago, swimming dog, that was just cash money. So we gotta get some
what ones
of those.
which ones specifically are catching your eye, Gus and Brian? I know Brian's just freaking out over there seeing all those new releases.
I got two pulled up here. These are quad doggy cussies. First one, the Sunset Perch. I mean, you guys take a gander here.
Oh,
you got
that's disgusting,
yellow
bro.
orange
Come
tails
on, what?
with the perch body. All right, that's gonna be seen murky water. And then this is my humble side here. Blotchy perch, navy blue, gold, and white.
Wait, that says blotchy walleye, which is also sick.
Mm-hmm. So those are two that I like a lot. And then Max, your one that you hit today was the swimming dog.
That's my favorite. Yeah, the Lunar, like all green swimming dog is going to be a staple for me. I already got when I saw that bait, I automatically just started thinking about the lakes that I want to throw that bait on. Yeah, that I know that color just
is that all you did when you saw that bait?
Relax over there, buddy. I'm not.
Watch your own bobber, Brian.
Yeah, watch your own bobber there, buddy. Gus, what about you? What are you looking at for some of the baits that are coming out for show season?
I definitely want to pick up in for our boy Glenn McDonald. I got to get a Sunset Jailbird for sure. We got to rep one of those. I think that thing will just be absolutely headhunted. Definitely, probably their new Wisconsin walleye. I know people are like, "Oh, put the white tip tail," but I mean that thing just looks pretty. It's like a little bit more brown and good gold highlights. Huge fan of that natural gold and white. Like Max said, Lunar Mars looks sick. They got the new Lunar Tennessee Shad, which is a little funky, but honestly, I kind of dig it. I like that subtle orange belly with like the gold, yellow, flashy sides, and then a little bit of a blue back. I mean, blue is kind of a weird color, but honestly, it's pretty natural. There's a lot of fish that have little subtle blue hues in them. You know, Cisco's got a little bit sometimes on the right sunlight, like a crappie would. I mean, you look close at some of these
Right.
panfish, and they got so many different, like, just weird, flashy colors to them. It's pretty cool. But I know the colors are more catching the fishermen, not the fish. But we don't care about that. We're still gonna buy them.
Hell yeah.
Hell
That's
yeah.
why, that's why the show colors are always so much fun when they start coming out. And I mean, you never know. Sometimes you strike gold. I mean, there's been a few years where, some of these show colors have really outshined. I
Yeah.
know a lot of people talk about just keeping things natural and simple, but part of the fun in all this is trying to differentiate yourself. And, you can do that by throwing some of these kind of funkier colors. What did you guys think
Mhm.
about that one that was just kind of like pearl white and then had the gold back? I don't know what it's called.
I think it was
I'm on my
I think it's pretty
phone, so I
solid.
can't pull it up.
I'll find
yeah,
it. Lunar
I
Money.
think it's
Brian,
lazy. I think it's lazy, but I think but I
Brian.
think but I after I looked at it, I was like, you know what?
Damn.
That's just gonna catch fish. It's not the most flashy thing, but it's colors that are tried and true.
It's got that
Yeah, I mean,
lunar
there's nothing
flash.
crazy about it. Somebody's gonna buy it, somebody's gonna catch fish.
I love how you're like, that's lazy, and like black baits just work super good.
All black.
Yeah, you buy that lunar one and
Uh,
just spray paint it black.
I mean, how do you
Yeah.
come up with Lunar Mars? Just gorgeous. Like there's some real science behind how they made that. And then they come out with Lunar Money in the same year. I mean, that thing looks 10 years older than Lunar Mars.
Yeah,
Question, Brian.
I don't disagree that it's a little less flashy, but I do agree with Gus that it's probably pretty solid. I mean, anything with
Oh
like
yeah, it's gonna
that
catch
full
fish.
white belly has do well for us, and I'm gonna be keeping my eye out. If there's any like smaller bait makers that's gonna be at these shows, hit us up because I really got my eye out right now for a new glide bait that I want to take to Kentucky for the Cave Run PMTT, and any
Yeah.
sort of different dive and rise type lures I want to take a look at as well.
Dive and rise for sure. I've been chatting with a
There's
few people about some
yeah,
dive and rise, and
cool.
sorry to cut you off, but I think
You're
that's a
good.
good category that I think we'll dive into some new ones. We'll definitely find some. That'll be cool. Also,
No
a
pun
side note
intended.
though, yeah, this is the our good pal Nick Amrose, he actually makes his own baits.
Shut up.
Shout out. He makes crankbaits. I think that's what he started with, but he makes like a jerk bait, not just a trolling crankbait. That's kind of like a resemblance of a 10-inch Jake somewhat. He makes a glide bait now. That's what I was going to bring up to you, Max. I think we definitely got to get some from him. And if I'm not mistaken, he's going to be at the
Is he gonna
Wausau
be at the
show.
show?
He's going to be at the Wausau show.
Oh,
Yeah. So definitely look out for him. Oh shoot. He's
does he
combining
have a
with a
name
booth.
for? Does he have a name for his baits yet?
Well, I know he calls the one, the two crankbaits he has. He's a larger one called the jackhammer and the smaller one called the chain hammer. That's a little bit more size friendly on the chain. I didn't get a chain hammer until late this year, so it didn't really do much in the late fall. I was catching more fish on a lot larger baits, but I know he's got some buddies that use the chain hammer and clean up trolling with them big time. And he's actually caught a few fish on his own glider this past year, pre-fishing in the cave run event. So that's definitely got
He
a,
his
and I know
paint
he makes a
jobs
sick,
are his paint jobs are incredible.
yeah, he makes a sick pattern. I think Clayton was throwing that this December. That's like white with like some shad hues in it, sparkly hues that's mainly white and with a little gold or something like that. And that would be a great shad glide bait. We'll plug more in there when I get some more info from him. I'm gonna go probably check out his shop one of these days and see how he paints them up and stuff here this winter. He's been working really hard. He's got a ton of blanks as we speak right now, and he's been sanding. So yeah, we'll definitely plug his info in more on which booth he's going to be at. He told me a few weeks ago or a week ago, and I can't remember what it is. He's sharing with somebody, but he'll be there. And Wausau isn't like a giant show, so you'll be able to see, everyone that's going on there, which is why that one's really, really cool. A lot of small batch bait makers. So excited for that. And yeah, like Max said, if you guys, any of the small bait companies you're going to the shows, yeah, let us know. We want to know which of these, glides and cranks and diving rides to get. We want to branch out and try some of these. We always love a small batch bait maker, cool paint jobs. We love those.
For sure. Well, it sounds like for next week, we're going to have some boots on the ground in the Chicago show for our guests next week. So I'm looking forward to that episode. We'll keep his identity hidden for this time. Gotta build it up a little bit. So looking forward to hopping on with you guys again next week and kind of getting back into the routine of things. Hopefully I get my Wi-Fi back and I'll won't be coming through like our episodes 1 through 3.
Who do you have for Wi-Fi?
I don't know.
Just gonna give him a big old shout out, but serious.
Yeah.
Shout out AT&T.
Yeah, don't think that that's the case, but
Yeah, sounds good. Before we wrap up this pod, I'll just give out the plug, the shout out to the Instagram. We got the Muskies on Tap Instagram. If you guys give that a follow, that'd be great. Follow us along our journey. Pump out some new content here shortly. It's kind of the winter, but we'll still get some stuff out, and we're really looking forward to the new year. Like we've mentioned in here, I got a new camera, looking to step up the video game this coming 2024 season. Also 2024 books for guiding with me are open. If you want to give me a shout, you can find me at Suggs Fishing on Instagram, as well as Suggs Fishing Guide Service on Facebook. You can give me a direct message there. You can also find all the guide info on www.suggsfishing.com, and that gives you the picks and the rates and what you need to bring and all that. It also has the merch. Not too many hoodies left. Whatever's left here shortly, I'm gonna cut it off on the website here probably shortly and bring the remaining to the shows. I forgot to mention that we're going to be bringing the remaining hoodies. I don't have a booth, but if you just flag me down, I'm going to run a show special price on them, cash or Venmo. And probably have the pint glasses with. I'll have a bunch of stickers for you guys. I'll be just dishing those things out just out of the palm of my hands. So looking forward to seeing
what about the
new show season.
What about the new merch batch that's cooking up right now?
Yeah, the new merch batch is gonna be some ball caps, some trucker hats, snapback, mesh back, just kind of similar to like what you'd get off of like a similar style hat to what is it? Like a hooked and tagged or a Sims or something like that. We're really looking forward to getting that dialed up. We'll have 2 colors. Once we know more, we'll let you guys know. Gonna first sell those at the shows. I'll be bringing them to Milwaukee, Minneapolis, and Wausau. Sell those first, and then if they sell out, that's awesome. If they don't, I'll throw them up on the website if you weren't able to make the shows. And yeah, looking forward to that. We'll give some more info once we get that. I'm in the process of dialing up the order as we speak, going through the mock-ups. So that is a little update there. And I think that gets us caught up here. I'm hoping that with the slightly warmer weather coming up soon, I won't be as sick. I'll maybe get out ice fishing. These temperatures are just draining. The days are getting longer, though. We got great things ahead of us. So with that being said, Brian, take us away here on tonight's podcast.
All right, everybody. Thank you for listening to this episode of Muskies on Tap. Shout out for Kyle Friedges for joining us tonight. What a guy. What an interview. Can't wait to talk to him soon in the future. And how about them Green Bay Packers? What a start to the playoffs for them. And there's a long road ahead. They are not going down anytime soon. Jordan Love, the truth, the future, the current. Matt LaFleur, the has been, the who's been, the will be. He's the truth. Packers are not slowing down. Stay tuned this Saturday, 7:30 p.m.
Love. Jones getting near the goal line. Is he in? He is! Touchdown Green Bay on the opening drive. Prescott fires for Cooks, and it's intercepted. Jair Alexander, he's got it. 2nd and 2 here, though. Here's Prescott over the middle. It's going to be picked off, and no one in front of him. Darnell Savage. Touchdown. Love, back foot, has a man wide open. It's going to be caught by Musgrave, racing towards the end zone. He is in. Touchdown, Green Bay. On the fake, Love zips it in there, and it's caught for the touchdown, Romeo Doubs.